What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Uncensored Critic Podcast. Thank you for joining me again for another episode. I really appreciate your support, so thank you so much. And you join me for another episode with a fantastic guest, and that is Mr. Doug Kerr, the recently WhatsOnStage Award-winning graphic designer and art director who designs for brands, books, and for the theatre with over 18 years of experience. Doug began his journey at the Cumbria Institute of the Arts to then go on to do his BA at the Liverpool School of Art and Design. From there, he became the junior designer for The Face magazine, and then the director at Mercy Limited, an independent arts council funded organization which designs for literary visual art projects as well as live performances and exhibitions. From there, he went to become the director and senior designer at Well Made Studio Limited, and now owns his own studio called Studio Doug in London. Links to his Instagram and website is down below in the description, where he continues to do his great work in design for theatre, books, and brands. And some of his just a small list of the clients and the people that Doug has worked with include the Bush Theatre, the London Borough of Culture, the Royal Exchange Theatre, Warner Music, the Playhouse, Pulse Films, and recently Empire Street Productions behind the fantastic show Prima Facie with Jodie Comer. And it was a fantastic design, which he won the WhatsOnStage Award for graphic design recently. And this is direct quote from Empire Street, which you'll find on Doug's website, amongst many other positive reviews, which is: Doug is an artist, innovator, and colleague, and someone who I view as being uniquely talented. I would be lost without his input. And that's just a small sample of the incredible reviews showing the incredible work of this man's graphic design. So, Doug, how are you, mate?
Hello, I'm very well, thank you.
Good. Thanks so much for coming on today. I appreciate your time.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, great stuff, man. So one thing I'd like to start with, a little start question I have, is to begin at the beginning. Where did it all start for you? Where did the love of art and graphic design start for you?
It's quite a weird one because I don't think I can pinpoint it, but I feel like I always knew that's what I was going to do, which is a really odd, I'm not some like guy who had some great calling or anything, but I was thinking about this recently, and what I kind of remember is being at school, and my granddad had always kind of said you should get into advertising because that's where the money's at, and that somehow I was like, okay, and then at some undefined point that kind of changed to the more sort of graphic design specific area, which I really can't, I don't know, I guess maybe like enjoying drawing football kits and football crests, all that you class sort of 14, 15-year-old activities. So I suppose I quite like doing stuff like that. And then, slowly but surely our sort of design technology classes started introducing little projects where you could design a logo for whatever you were building, and I just was really into it. And so yeah, from kind of like heading into the A levels, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a graphic designer without really genuinely not actually knowing what it was, to be honest. And then, yeah, I mean, kind of coming out the back of the A levels, then I was like, okay, that's definitely what I'm doing. And that's how I ended up the Cumbria Institute, because that's where I needed to do a foundation course to get the qualification I needed to get on a graphic design course. So it all feels, maybe it was different in reality, but this is my memory of it, is it just felt like I knew what I was doing. I had a very singular vision that that's what I was going to go and do.
Yeah.
I never sort of deviated from it.
Fantastic. So do you remember the first logo or the first design that you ever created?
Apart from football crests. I probably can actually, because it would have been in my, we had to like design sort of a clothing label brand in our CDT class. I'd have been like 15 probably. And it was probably terrible. I think it might have been called Envy. I'm thinking about it now. I can remember drawing it onto a coat hanger.
Do you still have the coat hanger?
Sadly not, no.
Lost in design. But if you mentioned football there, do you still follow football much? Who's your team?
Carlisle, where I'm from.
Carlisle, very nice.
United, yeah, having a good season.
Having a good. I know how you guys doing. I don't really follow football like in there. Were you guys League One,
League Two? So like the fourth league down, but we're in second place, so we're doing well.
Yeah. Very happy. You working your way up, man. Working your way up.
Yeah, just like that was.
But so, tell me about your time at university. What was it like getting to grips with? Because I did a degree in dramas, and it was more like a theory approach to the craft, so not so much practicality as I would have liked. So,
Yeah,
what was your degree like? Was it more hands-on
I
designing?
think it was quite similar, like there were, I remember there were some very small occasions kind of towards the end where we were a little critical of what we'd learned because we'd almost been given a bit too much freedom. And as it got down to crunch time, we were like, oh, there's loads of things we don't actually really know. I think that was really just a wobble. And actually, we had an amazing time there. It was a really great course with brilliant tutors. And I've carried it with me to this day, really. I've never really got my head around why, but at Liverpool School of Art and Design, they called the course graphic arts rather than graphic design. And it might have just been because illustrators came on as well, and we're all kind of sharing the same course. But, they really kind of encouraged us to just think differently and like not really be set on things. I remember friends that were at graphic design courses in other cities at the same time. If you'd kind of chat to them when you went back home for Christmas or something, it sounded like they were really, really, focusing on the real technicalities of the job. And I'd be thinking, do you know what? God, my last project, I'd made a film, which was completely pointless but fun, And I think that was what we took out of it is we definitely got like a lot of confidence in our decision making, perhaps by the end of it. And there were a handful of really good tutors there that really kind of just, encouraged that. And so when we came out of it, we kind of felt like we could do anything, which is probably quite a good thing, I guess, from uni.
Yeah. So what would you say was like the tools that university gave you for like those first, that you learned there, and then you graduated, and then you were sort of put in a position where you had to go and find work, and when you went on to where did I say it was from?
So I was quite lucky to spend a bit of time at the Face. I mean, I wasn't there for long. It was kind of a sort of it was like a scheme that they did with Levi's. So they were trying to find like hot young designers and then put them into the Face for kind of 6 weeks at a time, I think it was. And then they would essentially just be working on the mag with everyone else, but they'd also get to design a little mini section in the middle, which was done by them, and they were also bringing in writers on the same scheme. So then you'd sort of create a little mini magazine together. But that actually wasn't straight out of uni. So that was probably a couple of years later. When I graduated, basically I had, in terms of tools that they gave me, I had, a can-do spirit and a portfolio of work. And I was in the same boat as every other graphic design graduate in the country, which was just, passing that around any studio that I like the look of and saying like, please, give me an internship if there's any junior positions available. And none of that went anywhere. And so I ended up, the big thing for me was that I didn't want to go back to Carlisle. So I stayed in Liverpool, which is where I was studying, and with no plan whatsoever, and had a lovely summer just on the dole, having a great time. But then by the end of it, I was like, I actually need money. So I kind of randomly fell into this job in a mobile phone shop. I worked in a mobile phone shop, which I ended up working there for about 4 or 5 years. But once I had that kind of security, so I knew that I had a place to live in Liverpool, I had money coming in, then I tried to just keep finding opportunities for design work, there was not really much out there. But then me and a good friend, we started making a fanzine because we were just like, well, we've got lots of fun, silly ideas, and we kind of lived in this little micro scene in Liverpool anyway, with like loads of artists and poets and things that all went to the same 2 pubs every day. So we just made a little fanzine for them, which was really the main intention of it was just to keep us busy and not sort of forget what we've learned. But as luck would have it, that kind of got quite a good rep, and so we did that. That was called Mercy, and that we ended up doing that magazine for about 4 years, funded by us being in work, albeit selling mobile phones. But then little things started to offshoot from that. So, we got other people came on board, and it became more of an arts organization, and we put on exhibitions. And then slowly but surely people started to say, well, oh, we've heard of you and you can design, so will you design this for us? So it's really small things, and it took a long time, but the sort of the time from getting my degree to saying, let's make this into a business where we actually are designers, that was 4 years. So in that 4-year period, I was selling mobile phones in Monday to Friday, Monday to Saturday.
I suppose like you could get some. Did the mobile phones ever give you any inspiration, like with the designs or anything of the way that they did?
No, it was not mobile phones.
Yeah, I suppose that might have been a different time if we didn't have iPhones or anything. I don't know. I just thought maybe like the way that the mobile phones worked at the time, there might have been like some sort of inspiration. I don't know, silly thoughts. But so that was. I have a few questions about your process, but now you mentioned now exhibitions in a way. So and I've been to a couple, and they seem to be like, a huge undertaking, like so much planning, so much things like to do, etc. So tell me about some of the work you've done in exhibitions and how you prepared for them and what goes into it.
Well, I mean, I think that was just quite a thrilling time for us in general, because we were, like just not long out of uni, early 20s, living the life of Riley, having a great time in Liverpool with a really good like circle of friends and kind of, people on the outside of that, and lots of really great connections. So making the fanzine was like just an amazing experience, because it was kind of stupid and silly, and it really took the piss out of Liverpool, but in a way that was out of love, and people seemed to really like that. So we were just doing this thing, and we were doing it kind of for ourselves, but also kind of hoping to be noticed. But the sort of what was actually happening without us really setting out to do it was we were sort of building this little community, and everyone was kind of having each other's backs and just trying to sort of showcase each other's work. So yeah, in the end, that just kind of naturally became like, well, let's put on an exhibition. So yeah, we managed to get some money together, and they're always like in little small spaces. It was always just a case of saying there's loads of really great artists in this city, and I use the term artists very broadly, from designers to writers to poets to people making music or whatever. And for us, it was always just like, no one seems to notice them, so let's just make them get noticed. So that was always our intention, whether it was like putting on a little gig or an exhibition. The good thing in Liverpool is you've got the biennial every 2 years, so it's like quite a big international arts event festival. And I don't know if they really still do it now, but they used to put quite a lot of attention on what they called the independent strand, and it was a bit almost like fringy. So anyone could put something on during the biennial and be sort of considered to be part of it. So that was a really good time for us, because then we could, go to a lot of trouble to kind of put these things on that people couldn't see.
Oh, fantastic. So let's talk about your process then. So you've mentioned there like what you wanted to like put together, what you wanted to show when it comes to demonstrating your work. So for anyone who's hasn't got to grips, like someone like me, like I see graphic design as, I see the final product, like with Prima Facie and stuff like that, which we'll talk about in a bit. So how do you sort of sum up your role as a graphic designer, whether it's for a theatre, a book, or a brand, etc.? And what's your process when you start, and how and where do you start?
I mean, I suppose like the slightly crappy answer is it really varies from job to job. There's a lot of jobs come in that are just quick. You look at it and go, oh, just do that, and then it's done. But generally speaking, it all hinges on collaboration for a start. You've got to get on with the person you're working with and understand their vision and be working together to achieve that. Whenever a design job goes wrong, which has happened to all of us, it's usually because there's some kind of clash in that relationship where, at its most poisonous, maybe you've fallen out, or, you just, you've had a disagreement, but at its most gentle, you just might not be on the same page. And that can happen just because maybe you haven't asked the right questions at the beginning, or sometimes, personalities just don't quite, just people aren't quite on the same wavelength. So if you can nail that collaboration aspect, I think that's like the most important part of the job, really, because we're not fine artists. We're not just out here creating stuff that we think looks beautiful, and it doesn't matter to hell what everyone else thinks. Like, we are essentially being hired by a client who needs something. So then the reason it can vary is, that client might hire you with a very, very specific vision, or that client might hire you and have no idea what they want, but they can at least, in talking to you, you might extrapolate some information that they hadn't thought of, or you might see something that they're not seeing, and that's where it gets quite interesting, because then it's really satisfying when you have that first moment where you say, well, here's loads of ideas, and something they'll attach onto it. So yeah, I mean, like, process, it's all about the initial briefing and those early conversations, and just making sure that you don't feel like there's nothing as the designer, because I just ask questions until I'm out of questions, basically. And I think from there, there's just some kind of rough process. A lot of big design studios will say to you, "Oh, we've pioneered this design process," and it's got names for each stage, and they're broadly right. I'm not dissing them, but the reality is, it's just kind of, there's a moment, there's chaos, and then there's order, and somewhere in that is a solution that everyone's happy with.
It's very reminiscent of the rehearsal room process.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
You have those weeks or those days where you think, oh God, what's this show is going to go down the pipeline? What was the point of even doing this? And then it comes together and you're like, okay, that's why we're doing it. And it's all going to be fine. So yeah, man. So if it's okay to ask this, you mentioned there, like, there's always, obstacles in the way of, of creating some designs. And what's been a time where you found something particularly hard to design, and in a way, how do you sort of get over, find that thing of words? I can't find the right words to say this right now. How do you sort of pick yourself back up after, like if something goes wrong, or if a design doesn't go down as well as you thought?
Luckily for me, it's not happened much.
That's good.
When it does happen, if you've got a job that just goes fatally wrong, like, you sack the client or the client moves on from you, which has happened to me in both ways.
Yeah.
It's not a good feeling, and it can affect you for a little while, because it knocks your confidence. And really, the only thing that sort of fixes that is just the next good job you do. And luckily, they tend to come around more often than a bad job, So, and like, really great advice for anyone who's younger designer is knowing when it's time to get out of a job, because I think we all make that mistake earlier in our career, where a job's not going well, and perhaps the client, for whatever reason, it won't be going well. Not necessarily because the client's a nasty person, but it's not going the way anyone wants, and you feel like you've done all you can. Sometimes it's best just to get out. Sometimes it's just not worth the aggro. So I think when you get to that sort of stage of your career, and you just say, do you know what, I don't actually have to do this one, I can just walk away from it, then that's always a good feeling.
Yeah, protect.
That's how you get over it quickly. You just be the first one to pull the trigger.
Now, protect your peace. Don't get dragged into it. Yeah. So I'm just thinking about how I've had a few people on here who are movement directors and stuff, and writers, and they always talk about like if they hit a wall, or they have writer's block or movement block or something. Would it be say, like, do you have like graphic designers block? Is there? And is
yeah, and almost at the start of every single job, really, like, there's always that daunting moment where you just think, oh, blimey, here we go. Especially when I did, do you know Lift Festival? I designed all their campaigns. Well, I've been doing all their stuff for the last few years now, but they got called in for the 2020 festival, which sadly never made it because of COVID. It was the brief I got given for that when they first invited me to meet was like a designer's dream. It was really, really, big ideas, and quite an open brief in terms of what they wanted, but the ideas behind it were huge. And it's exactly what you want to see, but also it was terrifying, and it was a horrible job to begin, because I was just like, I really want to do a good job on this, but I'm just scared that I have to push myself. You can get into quite a nice little routine, you know, where I'm not saying you're not pushing yourself, but people come to you and you kind of know what they want, and it's just turning over nicely and everything's going well. But this was very much a brief where I was like, they really want me to kind of like, you know, push myself and like be as conceptual as possible, which is, you know, all you ever ask for. But then it's funny when that lands in your lap, you're like, oh God, I've got to work doubly hard here. So that was genuinely, I said to them in the meeting, I was just like, I'm actually scared of this brief, but we'll come up with something. And it's one of my favorite jobs, actually.
Oh, great. Yeah. So what was the finished product like? You know, seeing it all just all around, you must have been quite proud.
Well, it was bittersweet because it never quite made it because of COVID. So we got to the point where 10,000 brochures had dropped, and then COVID, we all got locked down kind of the week after. So the most exciting part of that job would have been seeing like the posters going up around London and then being at the festival, which was a really brilliantly programmed festival. But sadly, it never happened. So it was, you know, it was still a really, really definitely one of the jobs I'm most proud of for sure.
Right.
So it was still felt good, but it was a shame it never really saw its full potential.
Yeah. Do you think now we're out of all that? Do you think your designs will re-emerge, or you'll get the chance to?
Well, we just kind of, because then Lift, they did a kind of micro festival in 21, which sort of had some parts of 2020's cancelled stuff. So we did a kind of light reworking of the art. And then we had 2022 last year anyway. So we just evolved, you know, we did a new brand for that, which was kind of even better. So it's all good.
Yeah, fantastic. So in terms of like collaboration and stuff, you know, I've got a question written down here, which is, so how much of it, because obviously it is a team thing, you know, like I mentioned in the rehearsal room, it wasn't all about one person. So how much of like the way you design is like, what percentage of it is you, and how much of it do you think is like guidance or advice from other people, and how do you work together to create something?
I mean, I definitely won't put a percentage on it, but the political and safe answer is that it's 50-50. I think it probably is. It probably is, because
that's a good one.
You know, I can't. Literally every micro decision I make is rooted in, you know, the information I got given at the beginning. So yeah, it's not as if like anyone ever steers me into something and says you must make it look like this with this color.
Yeah, of course not.
I have specific things, but everything just sort of bleeds into it. But then, and also, like, I'm not particularly. I would like to think I don't have much of an ego as a designer, so I'm always the first person to go back to the client saying, you know, I'm super stuck. Like, I've got here, and this isn't what I want to show you, but I'm stuck. And it's really helpful to me to be that honest, because usually we'll get over it together. So I really need my clients as well to help me as much as I'm helping them. You know, I mean, you get holy grail jobs where you're just on fire. You know, you get the brief, you go away, and you're like, I've got this. I know what I'm doing. You do it, they love it. It's out the door in no time at all, and they're brilliant. And even then, I don't think I would really say that was all me. You know, like it was still probably a really good brief or some really good inspiration. I've just done Macbeth for English Touring Theatre, and it's gone so well. It's been it's been a really easy job, but like not because none of us tried hard, but because I had a really great brief from them in the first place, and then kind of rustled up just a few roughs, and they literally like one of the roughs, and I was like, okay, let's tweak it. And that's like, I mean, we talk about things you took from university. We had one tutor called John Young, who sadly passed away about 10 years ago. He was really famous. He had loads of you know, great advice, and he was a real character, and lots of kind of catchphrases that we would repeat behind his back. But like one of the big ones was, he'd just say things like, he'd see something that you'd presented to him at the end of a project that was like super polished, you know, you spent ages, and he'd go back through your sketchbook to where you first did it, and he'd say, that's it, just blow that. He used to say, just blow it up. And we used to always joke and say that to each other, just blow it up. But he's dead right. And that literally, you know, is affecting the way I did that Macbeth thing last month, which is that when someone likes the rough, you're like, well, yeah, I'll give it a bit of a tidy, but essentially it's there. It's already, if it's had that reaction straight away, don't overdo it, just blow it up.
Exactly. So you mentioned there about the sketchbooks and stuff. I had a question down here, which was, do you, when you create a design, do you flesh it all out by hand, but in your sketchbook, or do you jump straight to designs?
I don't, to be honest. That's probably a bad failing on my part, because it's kind of what I was taught to do at university. I sort of think the reality, people might feel differently about this to me, but I think the realities of the job when you get into it, and especially when you get busy and you're juggling multiple projects like I am, is you don't really always have the luxury. When you're learning your craft and stuff at university, you've got weeks and weeks for a project, and one project at a time, and you go to the library and you do all your research, and then you print some things out and you stick them in a book, and it's a great way of working. You come up with some really cool things that way. But then when you're actually at the coalface, it's like, can I get some ideas tomorrow? And you're like, okay, straight on the computer. Bam, 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 bam. So, I can't draw either, so I'm not really a sketchbook person. I've got, you can see it here, this is my book that I've always got, and it's just full of to-do lists and maybe just making notes. So I'll make notes for sure and just think about things out loud in my sketchbook, but I don't draw things, or apart from maybe if I was art directing a photo shoot and I couldn't find the right reference image, I would definitely draw like a stick man composition. That's about as good as it gets.
Do you ever have I get this image of like you like walking down the street and you've got your sketchbook like in your bag, and then you see something on the other side of the road and you go, I've got to sketch that. I've got to sketch that.
I wish it was that romantic. No, you do. Like we touched on that before about how you get over, there's that one area we talked about how you get over a job that's gone bad, but we didn't really get onto how do you just get over designer's block. And the reality is, it is moments like that. Like when you're least expecting it, just something will come to mind. Usually kind of when I'm in the shower or, walking around town. Quite often walking around town, actually, weirdly. And then you think, but then I'm not so bookish as to then sit down and write it all down, but I'll tell myself to remember, and I've got a good memory.
So I'm just curious, at your time in Liverpool at university, and you're doing your research and, as you say, in the library and stuff, was there a particular designer or designer's work that you came across in your research that really inspired you and really helped, sort of you took a lot of what they did and applied it to your own process?
There was actually. There was a few designers and studios that we all kind of fanboyed and were obsessed with, and that they all influenced us kind of aesthetically, for sure. The designer that really sort of changed how I work, and which I think about now actually, and still, if ever I see like a tweet where people are saying, what are your recommendations on design books, it's always top of my list, is Bob Gill. And he's got quite a few good books. He was more of an illustrator, I guess, but the way that he sort of talks about receiving a brief but then rewriting it so it makes sense to you is it's such a great simple bit of advice. But it's like, you quite often on a design job, and not so much in working with theatre, but if you get, say, a rebrand job come through and some big organization, they've probably already gone through loads of focus groups and board meetings to get to the point where they've authorized a budget to do a rebrand. And you might get like 8-10 pages of A4 about who we are and what we're about, blah, blah, blah. And that's really helpful and good to know, but it's a horrible document to refer back to when you start designing. And it's a really great way of starting a job, is to just go, how do I distill that into a paragraph, which is like, I need to do this, and once you've sort of cracked that up, everything changes, really. So definitely when I was kind of like getting into the second year of uni and thinking, I don't really know what I'm doing, because I just thought it was like making cool designs without any sort of real thought behind them. That was sort of just I wasn't really sure what was going on, to be honest. And then I read that book and I was like, right, okay. And that really changed my university experience, but it's still kind of like at the back of my mind to this day, really, how I work.
That's great. And in terms of when you create your designs, or what's the best software which one would you recommend? What platform do you use?
Well, yeah, I kind of work entirely in Adobe Creative Suite, so I spend most of my days just flitting between Photoshop and InDesign with a little bit of Illustrator. Um, it's not about the program, obviously, but that is, that's kind of my whole life, really.
Yeah.
Everyone's into Figma now, and I do have it, and I occasionally use it, but I don't really do that kind of type of design. Figma is great if you're doing, I don't know, website designs, but
Yeah.
I'm either creating artwork, which revolves around a lot around Photoshop, or I'm designing things that the artwork's being used in. So, programs and press ads and posters, which is in InDesign. So that's my life.
Yeah, it says sat by the computer or drawing. I can see it now. It's great. So one particular thing about your CV, which I really want to talk about today, is your work on Prima Facie, which we talked about before. We were speaking just before we came on, and I said, "Oh, Prima Facie, I love the design," and you were like, "Yeah, well, it's Prima Facie, mate." Yeah, it's great.
I still like. I'm questioning myself now. I'm 90% is Prima Facie. I think
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah,
way.
because we had I had Kate Godfrey on the show, and I said that, and she talked about it. She was like Prima Facie, and I thought, oh God, did I say it wrong? It's like, oh great. But yeah, man, I just wanted to, I said this to you off air, but I said this to you for the case of the recording and stuff. But yeah, your design for Prima Facie I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was really, really
Thank
lovely.
you.
And it really encapsulated so for anyone who hasn't seen the play or knows anything about it, it's about a young lawyer called Tessa who defends a lot of people in sexual assault cases, and it's her journey into the law and how she basically helps defend people against such things. And the design I thought was beautiful, like the composed side of Tessa, played by Jodie Comer, of course, and the sort of the inner voice of Tessa as well. And I thought you really, really encapsulated it really, really well, man. And of course you won a WhatsOnStage Award for your work on that as well. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. But yeah, tell me about your involvement in Prima Facie, Prima Facie, sorry.
I should never have told you.
No, it doesn't matter. No, it's all good. So where did it all start? Did
Well,
Empire Street?
it starts with James, the producer, James Bierman, who has Empire Street Productions.
Mm-hmm.
We already were working together, so he invited me to meet him. I don't know what year actually, maybe 2018 and 17. It wasn't long after I'd gone solo. So I mean, to just the kind of the quick potted history is when you talked about my career before. All those companies I worked for was just me and my friends. So we started the fanzine. We made it into a business. We changed the business name at one point. And then eventually I went solo in 2017 to focus kind of specifically on this niche area of work. So it wasn't really long after I'd gone solo that James he invited me around to his office, and he'd seen a lot of the work I do for Bush Theatre. And yeah, we just had a good chat, and he was kind of talking about how he was going to start producing under Empire Street Productions. And his dream would be to kind of have this ongoing partner who just does all this design stuff for him, and try to not fall into the trap of working with all the big agencies, who were brilliant, by the way. But I think he just sort of didn't want to have that kind of relationship with a really big company where, different designers are working with you. He was just like, who can come in on board with me and just be my guy? So luckily for me, he liked my work portfolio, and I got a script off him. That play never happened. Then we did Killer Joe with Orlando Bloom.
Wow.
And then we did True West with Kit Harington and Johnny Flynn. And then COVID hit. Just as the Pillow Man at the time had just been announced, but then that obviously didn't happen.
Yeah.
And then coming out the back of COVID, he emailed me and said, he was like, long time no speak. Here's a script for you. That was Prima. And so, yeah, we just took it from there. So it was kind of we've kind of got this accepted agreement that I'm his designer, basically. So once he had a script, the call was coming straight to me, and we sort of took it from there.
Mm-hmm. And so yeah, where did the design start from? What were your initial first designs, and then how did you create the?
It was the initial concept was weird. I mean, not like I don't think it would have landed as well. It was quite cool, but we were gonna do this sort of surrealist image. You'll have seen something like this before, where you've maybe got like a face looking on at you, but then the second half of the face is in profile. So it's like the nose is where the ear is. A bit kind of Picasso-y, but sort of a bit more like photographic.
Yeah. That sounds cool, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I've still got the all the initial drafts and stuff. It was quite cool.
Yeah.
But it did feel a bit, I don't know, not very West End. It would have been a cool image. I don't think it would have landed as well. And might have put people off. But I mean, what's really great about working with James, 9 times out of 10, when I'm working on a theatre artwork job, you've probably been hired by a marketing department. So, I've been doing all the work for the Bush Theatre since kind of 2014. And that's through a really strong relationship with their marketing team. And the marketing team obviously might go through changes over the years, and different teams come in. And then essentially you and the marketing team you're working for them, but you're also working in tandem to sort of win over the artistic director of the theatre, the director of the play, maybe the writer as well. There's a lot of people to keep happy. Whereas, working with James is a really interesting difference, because you just got a direct line to the producer, and it's just we just decide between us what we're doing. And we might get into some outside opinions. And James also just has got a really good taste, and, likes design and art, which really helps. So my experience of any new play with James is that he'll say, here's the script. I've got some thoughts already. Let's have a chat when you've read it. And then I'll probably have some thoughts from the script, and we'll kind of just share those ideas. And really, I mean, thinking about it, most of the shows we've done have then that initial kernel is what we've gone with, and there's never really been like a really dramatic U-turn the process. With Prima, we kind of focused on this surrealist thing for a bit, and we had ages as well. Like, he was on at me once he kind of decided to do the play, but there was no kind of like, the play wasn't about to happen, or he was fairly sure he'd get Jodie, but I don't think it was confirmed. So, it's still very much just a kernel of an idea. So we had loads of time just to play around with ideas, really. And we tried that, and then we tried some kind of more fragmented and sort of split screen type stuff. But we always kind of knew, we go back to this idea that prima facie is a legal term that means, at first sight, or kind of on the face, first impression. So it's like a legal term that we just take something at face value. So we kind of knew it had to be about her face, partly because that's literally what the title's about, but also it's a one woman show with Jodie Comer. Let's not overthink this, because that face is going to sell tickets, right? So there's it's a lot easier working on a show like that than when you've got, say, 2 or 3 casts that you've got to try and sort of juggle together. So and we our tastes are quite aligned in that we quite like bold, stark imagery. So it was always going to be in that world. And we was just trying to sort of get it over the line. Like, nothing, we were just working with like photos from Google Photos we found of her, and just trying to figure out what we liked. And things were like okay, but not exciting. They'd have been fine to go with, but they didn't excite us. And then that's one of those not that I definitely wasn't walking down the street with a notebook in my pocket, but there must have been some point where I suddenly was thinking, oh, well, double exposure is a good technique for this, because what we kept coming back to was these 2 faces of Tessa. So it was really just a case of, we know what the concept is, but we just can't decide what the application is. And then I was like, oh, well, what about double exposure? So we had like a Pinterest board of loads of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, then I decided I took against it quite vividly actually, and I was thinking I don't think
All
we should
right.
do this. I just don't. I was like, I don't think it's the way to go.
Uh-huh.
Mainly because all the references we had were sort of quite flashy fashion photos,
Hmm.
and it just didn't feel tonally right. So I was a bit like off it. And I remember when the shoot was coming up, I was kind of saying to Helen, the photographer, "Oh, I hope we get some other shots as well, because I'm just not sure this is the way to go." Um, and then I was just entirely wrong, obviously. As soon as we put it together, like literally the first draft, I was like, "Oh, I'm completely wrong. Yeah, this is the way to go."
Amazing, amazing. And so yeah, tell me about the photo shoot as well. Like, and obviously you knew what kind of shots that you wanted to get. So how did you? Obviously, you got the photographer there directing Jodie and doing all her stuff. But and like, what sort of, from a graphic design perspective, what do you want? What did you want Jodie to do, and what do you want like actors to do when you're working with them in the studio?
It's always a weird experience. I've been doing it for a few years now, and it's still a funny experience because I don't the title art director anyway. I don't love it. Always it makes, maybe I'm just being too like humble. I'm not sure, but it just feels so grandiose. I don't really love it. But then I am more than a graphic designer, so it is probably right. But I don't like. It's always quite funny going on shoot as the art director because
Yeah.
the photographer's doing like really hard job, doing a great job of it. And
Mm.
essentially all you're really doing is standing there going, yeah, move that way a bit. Try this expression. And then every now and again you look in the camera and go, yeah, they look great. And then you sort of don't say anything for 20 minutes and just watch. So it's a weird thing because you are bringing something to the table, but you feel like you're not. Maybe it's just me, but it's a
Mm.
funny thing. So, but I've got better over the in the first few shoots I ever did. I was just like, what what am I doing? And then you sort of start to realize you sort of like, okay, I do know what I'm doing here. So, I mean, luckily for me, that shoot came deeper into my career of doing that, so I was confident. But
Mm.
yeah, I suppose basically you went into that shoot and we knew it's quite an easy one to shoot really because we knew we just wanted two types of portrait, like a still barrister and then her in normal clothes, screaming. So it was a really clean idea with not lots of different setups. Quite often I go and shoot, so maybe we're going to try and get 4 or 5 different concepts and compositions, and that takes a long time. And
Mm.
also Jodie doesn't always have a lot of time, so I can't
Yeah.
imagine. I reckon we probably had about 2 hours altogether.
Okay.
But yeah, so I mean, like from Helen's perspective, Helen Murray, she just had a camera on a tripod, and we had a black backdrop, and then Jodie just came in and we all had a chat, and that's kind of where my job comes in really, is just to kind of she'd already spoke to James an email, but it's just for me to kind of show the references and say, look, this is what we're trying to achieve here,
Mm.
so can you do these expressions?
Yeah.
And luckily for all of us, Justin Martin, the director, he came over for it as well,
Oh wow.
which chatting to Jodie about it, I think she thought that was really great for her as well, because that was her first, it wasn't her first time meeting him, but it was the first time she sort of took direction from him. So that was like a nice way for them to kind of get to know each other in that context.
Yeah.
And great for me because I can kind of, even though I kind of inputted as well, there's that sense of everyone's got what they want from this because they were all here, so
Yeah.
there's never that danger of coming. You can come out of a shoot sometimes and then it goes to someone higher up and they don't love it, and then that's a problem because the shoot's
Yeah.
finished. So it's
Yeah.
really nice to have all the people that matter on there on the shoot.
Mm.
And I wouldn't normally do this, but because we kind of knew exactly what we were going to do with the images, I was kind of just making drafts, just sticking faces together on the shoot as they came into my computer.
Mm-hmm.
So really, by the time we were all saying our goodbyes, we'd essentially signed it off. I mean, we went through quite a few more revisions, me and James after, but the broad prints, like we basically had a Jodie sign off from the end of the shoot because she'd seen it and was like, well, I know the faces might change, but the whole red and blue, purple background, it's a yes from me, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, well, what made you want to go with that specific color design, that color grading in that poster?
Well, partly because the technique that we used only really, you probably only get 3 options, like red and blue, I think green and yellow, and pink and something. So blue and red was the only one that looked good, number one. Also, we from earlier on in the process, we wanted purple to be a key color for us because it's kind of a legal color. I think they use purple ribbons to bind legal filing documents and stuff. So we'd already kind of set on purple as our like brand color. So the blue and red really helped us with that. I mean, actually, we very rarely use like a straight up purple, but the background is just a very sort of very dark purple, if you've ever noticed.
I suppose the choice of color becomes such a huge part of it in the of the final design. Would you say?
Yeah, I think so. I think there are a lot of things that you don't. Well, no, I think you're right. Actually, yeah, I think color is usually comes up quite a lot in the early conversations on an issue, because even when if I do a photo shoot for, say, the Bush Theatre, which are much more kind of like realistic setups, where we put someone in a kitchen, or they're much more like portraiture. We still have to think really hard about what are they wearing, what's the location. So yeah, color does come into it quite a lot. Actually, there's not always meaning to the color, but it's still like you're trying to convey a mood with any of these jobs. That all you can really do with these projects is sell a mood and a tone, and color comes into that for sure.
So when it comes to actually, just before I ask that question, I think as I said earlier, I mean, it seemed with that design, I mean, the whole shoot process sounds like a really smooth process. Like
it really was, yeah.
Everyone just like all the way through, and then there's your design, and obviously a few tweaks and stuff, but you got it down and everything. But yeah, man, it was a really, really beautiful poster, and I think one that I take my hat off to you. It really, really encapsulated the theme of the play, the character, and everything. I think.
Thank you.
It was spectacular. So
it's also worth kind of pointing out, it's not highly original, like, a bit being fair, it's just a double exposure technique is been around for years and years, and you can go through our Pinterest board and see how often it's been done. So it's not as if it's nice to get the award and things, and it's not as if we sort of think, yeah, we did something super new and conceptual. But I think the job more often than not is actually just doing what's right for the job, and I think everything you're saying proves that. I think we just had the right technique, the right solution for that play, basically. And then what's quite interesting for us is, I think, because of the impact the play's had, and it's kind of grown and built this community around it, which none of us could have foreseen. I think personally that then starts to give the art sort of new meaning, and it almost doesn't feel like my art now. Like it's outgrown us now, and it's out there and it's among the community, and it kind of takes on more of an iconic status, where, and I can say that because I don't feel like it's mine anymore. Like it takes on this sort of, it takes on a bigger status because of everything it's been associated with, and the impact it's had, I think.
Yeah. Did you have like a moment in rehearsal? Or actually, first, did you go into the rehearsal room a lot? Did you get
No, that's not a place for me. I don't get invited.
Not even to have a look at design or anything? I don't know.
No, it doesn't really affect me. Like the first thing that, once you've kind of announced the play and it goes on sale, the next really big sort of physical thing for me is always the front of house. And then you do all that, but you don't actually go near a rehearsal room or preview nights or anything really. My next sort of main interaction with it was opening night, press night.
Yeah. And so you think, did you have that moment where you thought, I think you've touched on it just now, but after the play opened, where you thought, wow, we've created something really quite spectacular here?
Well, so I mean, on a really superficial level, press night was great because, number one, the play was amazing. So you come, obviously, and I think anyone connected to a play, whether you're the actor or director or you've got any relationship with that play, you want to come out of press night thinking it's brilliant, right? That's scary. I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
So it's obviously a really good feeling to come out of a show that good and know that your art's on the whole front of house, that. But
Yeah.
on a really sort of selfish and superficial level, that was like the first, like, oh, I'm really, really proud of myself. Um, but really, the bigger moment was when we started to realize that people were making fan art. And that's when I was like, oh my God. Because I
Yeah.
think something I hadn't really been prepared for on this is that I was aware, Jodie's amazing, and I've watched most things she's in. I think she's brilliant, and I'm aware she's, well known and famous. I
Yeah.
wasn't quite prepared for how famous she is. Like, she's like a global icon that I hadn't. It had passed me by a little. Not anymore, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But so when we started to realize that the fan engagement on, socials and stuff was through the roof, you were thinking, oh my God, we're connected to like quite a big play here,
Yeah.
which again was just like, isn't that good for us? But then slowly but surely, me and Helen Murray, we would just be texting each other every time you saw on Instagram, someone would have like someone did an embroidered version of the art, someone did like a sort of paper cut, there's loads of people, those sketches and digital drawings. And it started snowballing, and I was thinking, this thing is like out of our control. It's
Yeah.
amazing. And I mean, also, like, the reason we stumbled across that is because we realized a lot of people on, websites like Redbubble and stuff were selling sort of counterfeit posters, so we had to get going. But it was kind of, but even that was interesting to think that that was worth something to someone. And then, but the fan art was just insane. It was absolutely crazy. So there's probably still people making it now. There's so much of it. We should really try and collate it one day.
Yeah, I get on the phone to your lawyers and make sure the copyright doesn't get infringed in any way going forward. So no
Yeah,
one
well,
steals it.
it's too late. The horse is bolted, but it's fine because the fan art's great. It's like everyone's got their own twist on it. So it's not as if people have just gone out and remade it in Photoshop, like there's some really, really creative and crazy solutions. I'm trying to think of the maddest one I saw, but I can't remember now. There's some really out there ones. The embroidered one was probably one of my favorites there.
Embroidered?
Yeah, I think someone did a cross stitch. That was it. It was incredible. Wow. Absolutely amazing.
Oh, you should have asked for it, like a copy of it or something.
Yeah, no. Well, one day we should probably try and ask everyone to send them in and put them on a gallery or something. But
yeah,
it's probably,
do you think you could?
Overwhelming to collate it all.
Yeah. Do you think for your next exhibition you could just do solidly Prima Facie, just like an entire wall?
Yeah, you absolutely could. Yeah, you could.
Yeah, and have the embroidered one like smack bang in the middle or something, and it's just like everything else around it like a string. I don't know. You can tell I've got not a lot of experience in graphic design, but I don't know. It's just a crazy idea. And of course, on top of all that, you won the WhatsOnStage Award for your work. I mean, and congratulations again, man, and thoroughly well deserved. What was that experience like of going to the award ceremony and hearing your name when you was being called?
It was amazing and scary and thrilling and made me very tense.
Yeah.
I think it was my first experience of anything like that. And I don't know, to be honest with you, I was like super calm. I went with my wife came with me and she was quite nervous on my behalf. And I was just like, it's cool. I'm really glad to get the nomination, which is nice because we didn't like chase the nomination. We just got an email saying we've been picked. So that's really nice that you don't feel like you were chasing it and going after it. I don't think anyone does in WhatsOnStage Awards. You just get told. So I felt really pleased that we'd got the nom anyway. It was really great field. There's some really good art in all the entries. So I wouldn't have minded really whoever had won. But then I did feel confident. I felt like we had a good shout. So I don't know. I went in and I was like, yep, like I belong here. This is all good. This is all good. Yeah. I think the thing that kind of threw me off is that I naively assumed that they would do the awards in kind of reverse order that they'd done the nominations. Mm-hmm. Starting with I suppose for everyone in that room with the graphic design category is the least interesting. So I was like, well, I'll be first, I'll be out the way. And then we sort of work up through the tech stuff into the really exciting, best play, best actor, best actress, best musical. And then the very first award was like quite good. And I was thinking, what's going on here? So they obviously jumble it up, I suppose, to make an interesting show. But yeah, I was just sat there. You don't know who's won. You
Mm.
don't know what order they're doing it in. No one had really sort of said to me, yeah, you get up and do a speech. So I only really knew that after the first award that that's what's expected of you. So yeah, it's just, oh, the other thing to say is that it was a really good show. Like, were you there?
And I wasn't. No, I've been to a WhatsOnStage Award a few years ago. I think Nicole Kidman was in the audience, and
Oh,
and
wow.
she came up on stage. She won the award for a play she did in London. She played a scientist. I can't remember the name of the play, but no, she won it for that. But I remember just being in the it was at the Prince of Wales Theatre
Yeah, same.
in town, yeah. And we're in the foyer, me and my brother, and we were just looking around thinking, wow, how did we end up here? How did we get tickets for this thing?
Yeah, it's mad, isn't
Yeah,
it? So
yeah.
on the one hand, I was just like, I belong. I'm happy. I've got the nom. Feeling confident. The
Yeah,
show on stage is great. Like really
yeah.
funny hosts, really good sort of musical numbers in between the awards, some great speeches.
Mm.
Um, but all the while, just being like, I really wish they did announce my award soon, so I can just get over it. Um,
And have a
and then yeah,
drink.
then they announced it. And my wife said that when they announced it, I just said, "Oh my God." And then stomped up to the stage and then slightly freaked out. I was fine. I was completely fine going up. And then it's that moment when the band stops playing and everyone backs away so that you can talk. And it's just suddenly really quiet. And all you
Yeah.
can see is white light because I wasn't prepared for the brightness of the lights. So I was expecting to see a sea of faces. And I just had this like, and then I was just thinking, I better start talking. I don't know. Even though I had a plan of who I needed to thank, I was just like, "Oh."
Yeah. It's like, and
So
your brain suddenly
luckily for
goes,
me, it came out okay.
yeah. Oh, it did, man. I saw the footage on Instagram. So I follow yourself and Empire Street on Instagram as well as What's on Stage. So I saw the footage. No, you did it. You did great. But there's always
Not
that feeling
tweet.
like it's that feeling when you walk up on stage and you've rehearsed that speech. When it's something like an acceptance, well, I haven't done any of those yet. But is that you walk up and your brain goes, what?
Yeah,
Where's the words? Where's the words? Your body's like, I have no idea where the words are. You
yeah,
just would make it up. But no, but you did. No, it was a lovely speech, man. You did well, and yeah. So I think it was a great night across the board for the play. You won. Susie Miller won as well, and of course
yeah.
Jodie won for
Well deserved.
her for best actress, Susie for best new play, best writer, and yeah, I think you guys kind of swept the board really in a way.
Yeah, well, we were up for three and we won three, so you can't ask for
Yeah,
more than that, can you? And it's really nice
exactly.
to sort of sharing that with those guys, really, because they were very richly deserving winners
Mm,
as well.
fantastic. Fantastic. And I think when's the next one coming? Do you think when's the next award coming?
Well, I mean, I'm very much looking at it as a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'll be thrilled to ever get a nomination again. So that's not me saying I don't want one, but who knows? My whole experience with this play just feels like it's been a whirlwind, really, and it's still going on because we've got Broadway coming up in a few
Yeah.
weeks.
Oh yeah, of
Um,
course.
so it might never be repeated, or maybe it will. Maybe we've just hit a rich vein of form, and our next play will be just as big. But
I'm sure.
I think that's all of our experience on it. Like chatting to James, the producer, who, I don't think he's had successful plays before, but none of us, we're all in a whole new world with this play. Like it's
Mm.
not just like a mild success. It's a runaway juggernaut that's out of all our controls now.
Yeah, no, I'm sure the second award's incoming, man. I'm sure it's going to come for you.
Thank you.
So let's talk about Broadway. Actually, I'm just going to talk about a couple more things. I know you got to shoot off in a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's gone to Broadway now as a result, and also you've in your role as designing the process for Broadway, you've gone a step further. You released like a public offering. You asked people to submit their own pictures to be submitted for the Broadway poster, and if you see the images on Instagram now, guys, it's made up of a lot of submissions, which a lot of people put their headshots in, pictures of themselves, and how the play really touched them. And you got like thousands of people submit
Yeah.
stuff, didn't you?
Yeah, well, I think and this a lot of this, most of this stuff goes back to James, who's just got a really good eye, a good instinct for things to do, and also, and I think me and him are both quite similar in that we work in theatre, but we don't sort of feel bound by what's considered the done thing. So I think that affects a lot of the way that we work together. That we don't always take out a load of press ads, which a marketing company might say, well, you must get this Sunday Times full page ad. We're much more interested in just testing the boundaries of what you can get away with and how you can get into people's heads without just doing a big salesy press ad with loads of quotes on.
Yeah.
And the thing, one of the moments where you start to realize that this play was becoming its own thing was when people like James and Paul, who runs the social media, started receiving messages from people who'd seen the play. Just, initially just there was lots of people that, oh, thank you so much for putting this play on. It's a really important topic, but then those messages very quickly became, this is my experience and this is my experience. And that's really humbling to receive those messages. And also like what, obviously everyone got replied to, and we say, thanks for sharing. And we're here, we hear you. But there's this sense of like, well, how, this feels like some good should come from this play. Like I think James, I saw James say something about this in Jodie's interview in Vogue this week, that you can't just watch this play and then walk away and go, oh, well, that was great. Next one. Like it definitely has like a message that should sort of change you in somehow.
It does. Yeah.
So it felt to us, well, it felt to James really, that these people sending us messages sort of deserve a way to be seen and heard. And there's already a website called Everyone's Invited. I'm not sure where they're based actually, but we're linking up with them in Broadway anyway, where it's essentially a place for people just to go online and post their sort of survivors' stories of assaults. So I guess we're riffing on that. I don't know if we knew that existed first or not, but James just said, oh, I'd really like to start collating these testimonials and we could put them onto the website so that people sort of can see that they've been heard.
Yeah.
But then it's also just, again, talking about these funny little flashes of inspiration. He was flying back from New York not long after the Queen died, and he just sent me a photo from his phone of one of those like image mosaics, which is the Queen's face in Heathrow. And he was just saying, can we do one of these? And I was like, I've got no idea how to make one of those. I couldn't begin to tell you, but okay, fine. Like if that's what you want to do. And so it's taken a few months, but we've got this thing made now. And so what we ended up doing is we just called it Prima Facies and asked people to submit. So everyone that submitted sent a photo of themselves and a short bit of text about what the play meant to them. And yeah, I mean, like an unbelievably humbling thing to be in receipt of. And most of those testimonials have now gone up on the website. And then everyone's face went into the new artwork. And there was about 1,100, just over.
Wow.
In a short space of time. We could have kept it going and got more, but that was, over the course of a few weeks, we got that many. And so everyone is now in Prima Facie's art, which is now, that's the art we used on the full page New York Times ad last week. And that's the art that's just gone up last night outside the John Golden Theatre in New York on a huge billboard. And actually also, as of one day this week, we've got fly posters all around New York as well with that artwork on. So
amazing.
Yeah, it's cool. It seems to have gone down really well with the fans.
Yeah. I mean, I was one of those people. I submitted my picture and everything because I just thought the play really had a big impact to me, just from an arts perspective, and just not only just the design, but the play itself. And of course, I love Jodie and everything as well. I think she's just outstanding. And yeah, I really wanted to communicate that also, like, to you guys as a whole. Just, you created a really, really special play, and really, really something from top to bottom, from the design all the way through to the actual play itself. And yeah, I think, it shows the incredible work that you did on that. man.
Thank
So
you.
thank you for that. Thank you so much. I think have I got any more questions about that? Prima Facie. Oh yeah, I was going to ask about, are you going to go to New York? Are you going to
Yeah,
go
I
see
literally
it?
booked my hotel last night, actually.
Oh
So
yeah.
we, yeah, everyone's going to try and get out there. I think most of the team will be out there for opening night,
Mm.
which will be really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make a little trip out of it. It's my 10th wedding anniversary, so we're going to sort of tie
Hey.
into that and have an excuse to go without the kids.
You could take her along Brooklyn Bridge when the sun's setting or something. I don't know. But yeah, man. So yeah, you're looking forward to getting over there and getting back into
Yeah,
it.
I mean, it's the absolute definition of an ego trip because I'm only going, well, obviously I want to see the play again and be part of it, but
Yeah.
essentially I don't need to be there for work reasons. I'm just going, I'm not needed on site, put it that way, but I just want to go and see my own posters in New
Yeah, of
York.
course, of course. You go and see how it's translated over there, which sounds like it's translated beautifully. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think the Americans are going to go absolutely nuts for it. Personally, we'll
of
see.
course,
I think they'll just go crazy for the play and Jodie.
yeah, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be huge, and yeah, that's good luck with all that as well and everything. And of course, Ed, like, what's just got two more questions for you, man. So what's next for you? What you're working on next? If you can talk about your next project.
I mean, quite a lot of different things. I suppose the most significant would be the Pillow Man, which is this summer, because that's
Of
also
course,
with Empire Street. So that's our next play together,
yeah.
which we started designing to go on sale. It should have been performing in the summer of 2020.
Hmm.
So we did basically most of the design work in 2019 and launched it, and then sort of obviously went off sale, but now it's back on, and it'll be this summer. Um, Also, another one where we've gone for quite a striking piece of art that's a bit different. So yeah, we're just testing boundaries again with that one because it's just like an illustration. I don't really think at any point we'll change the art to include the cast. So
Mm.
we're just fully committed to this kind of spooky face we've got.
Yeah, absolutely.
That'd be a big one, yeah. And then I mean, I've always just got ongoing stuff. Like I say, I do everything for the Bush Theatre, so there'll be loads coming up,
Mm.
no doubt. And Lift Festival next year, the next iteration of that. I've just done a bunch of stuff for Northern Stage, Shakespeare North Playhouse, and
Yeah.
Art
Well,
Theatre.
great. Well, I look forward to seeing all of it, man. It's gonna look great. And so just finally today, there's a closing question for every guest. Is what's been an experience you've had in your career to date that you're never ever gonna forget?
Oh, well, I mean, it's got to be this, hasn't it? Really, I
Yeah.
can't, like I keep saying, it does feel like a bit of a once in a lifetime moment. So, um, hopefully, it is. Like, I would love to replicate the success of this many times over.
Of
But
course you
like I
will.
say, I just feel like um, there's there's something going on with this play that's just to keep repeating myself, like outgrown all of us, and now it's just this big entity that we're all working on, but is also owned by this incredible community of fans.
Hmm.
Um, so it's a pretty unbelievable experience, really.
Yeah.
I suppose it'll come to an end when New York's over. I don't know, but
No, you never know.
um, it was, it's funny. I was checking my emails before I joined this call, and James sent me the script for this in March 21.
Hmm.
So 3 years deep now of looking at this and thinking
Hmm.
about this, with at least 6 more months to go. So it's a pretty epic job, to be honest with you. Especially because we've just got this one piece of art. I was chatting to Susie at the awards actually, and I was saying I work in a co-working space, and I was saying I wouldn't. People must look at my computer every now and again and think this guy's just been looking at the same face for 3 years. What's he doing? So yeah, I don't. I've had a lot of great experiences in my career for sure. Like it's not the only one, but I don't
Yeah.
think nothing's reached this height for sure. So
Hmm.
it is the most memorable, really, or it will be when it is.
Amazing. Yeah, well, there'll be plenty more of them to come, and I'm sure you're doing some fantastic, fantastic work, and
Very much appreciate it.
and thank you for sharing it with the world as well, because I think your design, like going forwards, whenever people will see it, they'll think of that play and think of how how brilliant it is. And so you've created like a what's the word? You've created an image that's going to last for a long time. And
Yeah.
yes.
Do you remember a few years ago, the National Theatre did an exhibition of all of their graphic design history, especially because they're quite interesting, because as long as they've been going, I think they've only had, I think it's 5 or 6 different creative directors. So like people have had whole, generations of this is how our art looks, and it moves on. Now it's the graphic design studio that goes under. But something that I really took home, I bought the book for that exhibition as well. And like, there's a really nice quote in there about how when you create an artwork for a show, it's essentially about selling this mood or this scene. But then it also serves as like a recollection. So the artwork changes its meaning after you've seen the play. And then it becomes this like permanent thing that you sort of look at and remember the play. So it's interesting you said that. It sort of ties back into me. The quote's much better than how I just worded it. It really, really stays with me as a designer when I'm thinking about what we're trying to achieve when creating artwork. Because sometimes it's nice to get a little reveal in there or something, or just, I don't know. It's nice to come up with something that outlives the play in a sense. That you can look back and be sort of stimulated all over again.
Yeah, amazing, dude. Doug, thank you so much for today. I've really, really loved listening to you, and it's been a really great talk. And I've learned so much about graphic design with you in the last hour or so, and it's really opened my eyes to how just how every facet of a show is important, and every component really works together to create something really special, which you've done in bucket loads across your career, and of course on Prima Facie as well. So dude, thank you so much for today, man. I've really, really loved it.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm just gonna, if you just hang on, I'll finish the recording and then I'll say goodbye to you one-to-one. But guys, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. This has been the Uncensored Critic Podcast, and I will be back very, very soon. And once again, Doug, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.